Greetings everyone, Melderon here, on finally another Defcamp Melderon TV video. There's a lot I want to talk about here, and I initially wanted to pre-record this, write a script or something, but you know what? I just think it's better to just talk about it and give my honest feedback on these things. This video is going to be split up into two parts. One's going to be my thoughts on Classic WoW as a whole, the experience going from level 1 to level 60 and then clearing all the content, talking about some PvP, and at the end I talked about some personal things, where the channel's going, why we've been so inactive in the past couple months, and just give a general update to our subscribers because it's been a crazy year. I'm sure I'll have to tell you guys that. So Classic WoW, thoughts on beating the game, quote unquote, right? Beating the game, what does that mean? It can mean different things to different people. Obviously to me and to my guild and to Defcamp, it was clearing all the content, seeing all the PvE content, and doing it with our guild, and that was an amazing thing. It was a roller coaster ride for sure. Phase 1, we were part of a mega guild, Victus on Skyrim, consisting of 5 raid teams. And Sidewinder was the name of our raid. We were the most casual, and we were the ones who kind of, raided when we could, got the 60s when everyone could, and went through the content. And it's crazy because when you look back at that, guild was a lot different back then, and our goals and a lot of things changed during that time. We went through changes in leadership, we went through changes in our core positions, tanking, etc. But we persevered, and we got the raid content down, we got MC down. Not the first week, obviously, or not quickly in any stretch of the imagination, but we did. And then, at the end of Phase 1, some inter-guild issues started to happen. Some of the better guilds transferred off the server, guilds broke up. So, at this time, myself, Defcamp, and Talix, our raid lead, close friend of ours, we're now the leadership of the guild, decided to remain on Skyrim. We decided on a name, Eden, which I actually was not a fan of initially, and I'm still ambivalent with now. And, Phase 2 was the World PvP, and this is where we saw Skyrim's Alliance population pretty much leave. Stomped into the ground by the Horde, open world PvP. I don't think any of us realized that was going to happen, but with an honor system like Classic WoW, I guess it makes sense. And that was tough. That was actually pretty demoralizing, to be honest. As a Horde player all my life, I realized the importance of having both factions on a server for the overall health and stability of the server. And that's when things started to feel a little different. It didn't feel like private servers anymore. Of course, there were other things like leeway and some batching issues, and it was definitely a different game than when I played on private servers for all the years I did, starting the channel in 2016 now, thinking about how long ago that was, but it was a lot different back then. Private servers were, for the most part, pretty evenly split between Horde and Alliance, with a little bit of Alliance favor usually, but nothing like this. And it was a little taxing, to be honest, on a lot of us, on the guild, on people on the server, but we persevered. And the content that we were doing wasn't that hard, even though we had kind of a mishmash crew of people from different walks of life, different expectations for the game, really good players, really average players, and just people who had a certain amount of time they can put into the game. And at this time, all that was really out was, you have Dire Maw, you had an MC. So that was basically it. PvP was still open world, and it was an interesting time, let's put it that way. I think this is the time where we kind of initially thought that things weren't going well. Not from a subscriber perspective. This was still the first kind of die-off of people that didn't want to play, and that's understandably so because of the PvP situation. And then Phase 3 rolled around in February of 2020. BWL came out, new raid, and we had some burnout issues there. We had to make some changes. Mavic, who is a close friend, also involved in the Classic WoW Live team, totally created with Egregious the leveling guide. Big Classic WoW player, great mind for the game, came into main tank force because we had some tank issues, people leaving, people quitting, stuff like that. And that's when things really turned around for us, going from a guild that was initially casual to more of a serious, I wouldn't use the word hardcore, but serious guild. Trying to get the content done quickly, efficiently, using world buffs, obviously, which is a whole nother thing, and I'll get into that later. But I feel like it was definitely a turning point for us. And then going forward, we became more serious, got better players. Some people just left or burned out when they saw we were making some significant changes in the raid, gearing more towards efficiency and getting the content done in a timely manner. That kind of carried through all the way. When AQ40 came out, we actually started practicing on our own PTR or sandbox for that raid. And of course we, went through it in week 1 because of, number 1, because of Onslaught, being able to open the gates on Skyrim so quickly in the first possible week, and getting in there with all the practice we had of AQ40 wasn't really a challenge. And this is the point where I think a lot of people started to think Classic WoW was it was kind of a joke, right? Like, all the endgame content was pretty damn easy. And I've never done any, competitive raiding as far as Mythic is concerned. Defcamp has. The hardest I ever went was Heroic. Even compared to that, it was pretty easy. Not to say that it wasn't challenging, but it was challenging in a different way. Being a GM of 40 people, 40 plus actually, because of our roster and because of our bench, it has its own unique challenges, and I think that's the mechanic of Classic WoW. Up until this point was, can you wrangle 40 people every week? Can you get world buffs? Can you not get burned out from that? And that was the Classic WoW story for forever, basically, until Naxx came out. And this was the first time, and we also practiced on the PTR as well for this, but this is the first time we actually had some significant, hurdles here. Naxx was not an easy raid, by any stretch of the imagination. Now, of course, you can compare it to current day stuff, you can compare it to Mythic. They're very different animals. It's a raid almost designed to challenge each of your core members. Personal responsibility, longevity, progression in a way that's actual progression, using gear that's available in the dungeon to get certain bosses down. You're able to get Huhuron and bosses like that down without having the best nature resistance gear as long as you have world buffs. Saffron's not like that. Kel'Thuzad, to an extent, is not like that. Four Horsemen really isn't like that. It's hard to burst them down. And even back in 2004, 2005, 2006, when they designed these raids, designed Naxxramas exclusively, they designed it in a way where, even keeping those ideas in mind, let's have a boss that you can't burst down. They have 2 shield wall cooldowns that they use at a different percentage of their health, and that's an interesting mechanic. Now, of course, you can cheese that now with world buffs. You can actually just go through one of those phases and burst Thane down. That's pretty much the go-to strategy for 4 Horsemen for any serious guild, is to kill Thane and move on from there. But still, there was challenges. And on Scarum, I know within the first 2 weeks, there was guilds that were falling apart. Now, whether that's because of the Shadowlands release, or whether that's because the game was actually challenging now, and everyone was complacently lulled into a sense of complacency, to use the word again, that I think people were just kind of shocked and didn't realize how much farming would have to be required for shadow pots and frost pots and frost gear and all these things. And I think it was just too much for people. And it makes you think, back then, I know it was famously, Naxx was known that it wasn't cleared, but was it because DBC was on the horizon, or was it also because it was challenging? And I think it's a little bit of both, and I think it's the same for now too. Is it because Shadowlands came out, or is it because the raid was challenging? It's a little bit of both. But what I've learned from raid leading, or from GMing more specifically, is that it's a challenge to get everyone wrangled. It's a challenge to get everyone where they need to be. There are mistakes that are going to be made, and having a good core around you of players, officers, raid leads, tanks, healers, all these things, it's almost required to get through this raid. And I think that's what people are starting to realize now, is that it's not just this pushover that everyone says it was. And now that I've completed the whole life cycle, there's a lot of perspectives I have now about Classic WoW itself. And initially, I think the first thing I like to say is that I didn't respect the game until Naxx came out. And I didn't understand it until Naxx came out. And of course, I played private servers for years, but I never did Naxx on private servers. I did a few raids. I wasn't really into raiding, I was more into leveling, to be honest. I was more into getting to know the game at a much deeper level, because when I played back in, 06, 05, I only played one character, got him to 60, never raided with him, and then only in private servers did I experience anything else other than warrior. I leveled a mage in TBC, but that doesn't really count, obviously. So I've kind of have a newfound respect for the game, and I initially kind of thought that Blizzard made some mistakes, obviously, but it was their first time doing a legacy game like this, and I think they will learn from those mistakes. But I want to say that the implementation overall was excellent, and I think that it gave a great experience to the player base. Now, what I think can be changed, if we're going to go to fresh Classic, there are some things I would say could be shifted and altered. First thing I think is it would be okay to buff some of these raids. MC, perhaps BWL. AQ40 is a touchy one, because I think that at that point in development, they kind of knew what they were doing more, and the fact that AQ40 is very easy is not really dependent upon the mechanics themselves or the bosses. I think it's more because of the world buff meta. So I think buffing the content would be a good idea. I think that having less realms, obviously that's going to happen because TBC is likely going to come out. There's going to be less popularity for Classic WoW going forward. So I think maybe having better stability as far as server size is a good idea. I don't think open world PvP is a great idea. I think it's something that should probably change. And when they go forward, if they're going to make fresh realms, I think they should just bring out Battlegrounds after Dire Maul. Because before Dire Maul, there's no honor, there's really no initiative to kind of do these death balls that are rolling through servers. You still have organic open world PvP, but just because of PvP's sake. And I think that's okay. People will still open world PvP, but the fact they can queue for Battleground will make things a lot better, and you won't have these horrible faction imbalances due to people pressuring people off the server because of just honor grinding. So that's one change I would make. Buffing MC and BWL is not as easy as I maybe allude to. I don't know how you buff things. Do you just make things have higher armor values? Do you make things have higher health pools? Okay, then it just takes a little bit longer to kill. I think the real thing to do in order to actually buff content, quote unquote, is to remove world buffs. Now, I know that this was an unpopular opinion when I made world buffs are an exploit, thanks to Talajo for writing that script, and I really believed in that, and that's why I made that video. So, world buffs, to me, flat out trivialize content. I know what you're going to say, MC's easy no matter what. You know, it's still going to be doable without world buffs. You're right, it is. It's going to be a little bit more tedious. But as the raids progress in difficulty, as they come out, it's going to be less and less of that. It's going to be actually dealing with the mechanics, and not so much just being bothered by the fact that the raid encounters are longer. Fights like Twin Imps, fights like Oru, fights like, not really Cthulhu, because Cthulhu is pretty easy to be honest. But fights like that, and then, of course, in Nax, Four Horsemen, Sapphiron, KT, a lot of the fights, actually, Loatheb, Hagen, all of these fights are being, you don't have to do the mechanics. I mean, we blow up Hagen before he dances. We destroy Loatheb before we have to do our, third impending doom or whatever, right? And that's because of world buffs. And we literally get the world buffs to do the content in that way. And I know some of you are going to say, well, then don't get world buffs. It's not that easy. You can't tell your whole raid not to get world buffs. It's just very, very hard. It's actually easier to tell your raid to get world buffs because of the performance metrics that are associated with them. And I think the only way to get rid of that is to remove them. And in my video, I stated that they don't have to be removed from the game, they just have to be removed from the players when they enter a raid instance. That's the only thing you have to do. You can still get them for leveling, you can still get them from open world PvP, you can still have fun with them in dungeons, all those things. But to make Classic WoW better, and to make the people who really want to be there play, and that's the people who you want, because again, there's going to be a lot less servers because in a fresh start, TBC is going to be much more popular. If you want these servers to be impactful and have players in them that want to be there, I think removing that would be fine, and people would still want to play. It may shift metas. You may have less warriors because of that. Not saying that warriors are still going to be the best in most situations, but you'll have more mages, you'll have more room for quote-unquote meme specs, even though that's, up for debate. Now, to be fair, I do want to provide one counter-argument to the removing world buff thing. High-end, super high-end guilds, speedrunners, it adds a level of complexity. It's cool that you have to get these buffs, and then if you lose them, it affects your run. How many people die affects your run. In that way, I think world buffs are actually pretty interesting. So I get the point if you're like the Onslaughts, Progresses of the world, the Apes of the world. I understand that world buffs add a level of complexity, add a level of interest to the speedrunning meta. That's a good reason to keep them in, just alone. But again, I think we should affect most players, not the small percentage of players, the top 1%, if you will. So I think that overall, looking at all the content, seeing how challenging it can be and how things have went, Blizz did a great job. They did what they set out to do. They recreated the game to the best of their ability and to the closest they could. I mean, obviously they didn't use, 1.1 talents and stuff like that, but patches, to me, I try to look at it as a game developer. Patches are used to quote unquote better the game in a way, right? When a game is initially put out, there are issues, there are bugs, there are obvious inconsistencies, there are obvious balancing issues. And to invite those older patches is, into a developer's mind, produce a much less polished experience. And that's why I think that you'll never see something like that. Because even in TBC, you'll see a 2.4.3. Because there's so many things that went back and forth as well. And like I said, it's just you want to provide the most polished possible and the most perfect version, quote unquote, of the game. So I think those changes, potentially buffing MC and BWL, removing Phase 2 open world PvP, and limiting world buffs to just everything outside of a raid, will make the game better. Now, there are some minor things you can change. I personally think that the batching windows are kind of weird and wonky. I think that the leeway mechanic is also wonky. We don't need that anymore. I think it could have significant changes in the PvP meta if you remove those things. I don't have enough experience in competitive PvP to really talk about that, and I think that there are some good arguments to make, but I won't do them the disservice by trying to make those arguments. I think they're wonky, and I think that they would be fine if they were removed. But again, as someone who focuses on PvE, I think those are the most important changes you can make to the game. Before we move on to a different topic, I talk about, a change you can make that isn't actually the game itself. Blizz, you got to do a better job of handling these bots and these farmers. Black Lotus, items like that. Hell, even Plague Bloom. I'm seeing people, you know, fly hacking with Plague Bloom. I think removing these bots from the game would have a significant impact on player retention. I think people feel like they shouldn't farm, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that because of the inability to compete with these bots. People don't flask because they can't afford it. I mean, it's almost breaking our guild bank now, keep our main tank flask. There's things that just need to be changed in that aspect. Real money trading is another thing that's kind of linked to this, but it's not the same thing, obviously. I'm not sure how you can crack down on RMT without introducing something like the WoW token. And I don't know how I feel in that situation now, especially knowing that Gressel went for 198,000 gold. That's just crazy. It's pay to win. That's why the original WoW token was installed. You know, I don't know if how I feel about that anymore, to be honest. Something we can have a conversation about, though, and something that should be talked about by Blizz when thinking about implementing TBC. Well, thanks for sticking around this long. Now I'd like to move on to, you know, just a channel update, personal updates. As you probably have noticed, the level of, you know, streams and videos has gone significantly down over the past months. And I say even when the game launched is when things significantly went down. And that's due to many reasons. First reason is, honestly, we've been playing the hell out of Classic WoW. I knew this was probably going to happen. I've been making videos for 3 years before the game came out, talking about this game, hoping that it would come out, and the fact that it did, I immersed myself into it, and so did Defcamp. And as the primary video maker person, I can say that that had a significant impact on the clip that I'm putting videos out, right? And I want to apologize to subscribers for that because, you know, you are expecting a certain rate of entertainment, if you will, or guides or whatever it may be. But as someone who is, you know, making primarily guides before the game came out, that's not 100% true. We made a lot of community content, podcasts, stuff like that as well. It was kind of counterproductive to put guides out after the game came out, to be honest. The game's out. Let's play the game. Again, just an apology there. It's hard. It's hard to keep up a lot of different things. Someone who works full-time, someone who runs the guild, right? It's a lot of work. I didn't realize... I mean, I did and I didn't, right? I knew how hard it was in other expansions, but I think it's harder in Classic. It's harder because there's more people, there's more to do. The fact that world buffs are a thing. All these things kind of snowball, and I guess I had to make a decision personally. What do I want to put my time towards? And I got the most out of, to be honest, like getting the guild together, you know, running these raids. Got a lot of enjoyment out of it. But on the same end of it, it was tough. And then the next thing is COVID. Like it's been a shitty year, guys. Coming from, finished my doctorate and had plans on one thing, didn't work out. And I went back to Philadelphia, moved back home. That kind of culture shocked me a little bit because I was not expecting that to happen. And then I feel like as soon as I kind of was catching my stride, kind of getting my life back together after that, what had happened, it was now this. And it can be debilitating, to be honest. Working from home, thank God I have a job, but seeing the same things every day, you know, waking up in the same place. Well, obviously you wake up in the same place normally, but I guess what I mean is a mental place, you know, same surroundings, same everything. It's crazy. Humans, in my opinion, aren't meant to live that way. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a gamer and I'm pretty well prepared for social distancing. However, I do like to get out. I do miss going to my job. I do miss seeing my friends. I do miss going to bars and restaurants and things. Through all of it, I think this was the only consistency I had outside of my family was my guildies. It just kind of became the norm. And content creation took a back seat because I didn't feel connected to it. You know, I felt like when I was able to fulfill myself socially and physically, I guess, like going out and exercising and stuff like that, when I was able to do those things in a more consistent basis when I was, you know, pre-COVID, I felt more attached to the content creation because it was an outlet. I lost that during COVID. And I'm just speaking for myself. I can't speak for Defcamp. I know he's had some challenges too with COVID, and streaming's gone down, and we're trying to get that back up again. But it's just been tough, man. I know I don't have to preach to you guys. You know. Everyone here knows. Everyone listening to this knows how shitty this year's been. And I'm not here to, like, tell you things going to be peachy keen tomorrow, but I will tell you this, that I'm trying to put more effort towards content. There's a lot of TBC content that I want to put out, and I essentially kind of have to, because, you know, there's a lot of shaman content that I really want to get out there, and I'm working with Egregious on a few of those videos, and it's, I don't want to say it's my duty. I don't want to put like an unneeded pressure on myself, right? But want to get it done for the community. I want to be able to get into the beta and do some testing. I want to be able to do some shaman content and non-shaman content too. There's video ideas that I have written down that I just haven't touched because of the feeling that it's just insurmountable sometimes, you know, or that I'm so complacently fixed into my role as in my job and in the guild that's taking control of what I have my free time, and that's not healthy. Now that things are winding down, hopefully, and there's time to kind of rethink, and I urge everyone to try to do that this year. You know, it's a new year. Hopefully the vaccine will bring some new light and hope, and we're able to get back to our normal lives at some point this year. And I hope that's going to do wonders for me, and I'm sure it'll do wonders for all of you out there as well. But I just want to say, like, stick with it. Like, we're almost there, I think. We're getting there. We have a few months more to go. And I'm looking forward to that, because TBC may be coming out as soon as, the beta might be coming out as soon as February if these leaks are true. We'll probably get an announcement at the virtual BlizzCon in the middle of February, and then we could have the game in spring. So there's a lot to do, you know, there's a lot that I want to get out there, because I enjoy content creation, guys. You know, I do it because it's a hobby. I really do enjoy it, and I enjoy providing information for the community. I enjoy when people in game tell me that my guides helped them, or they enjoyed this podcast, or, you know, I get something out of that. I do, you know, it's fun, and it's why I do it. So again, just an apology for people who are wondering where the hell we've been, what we've been doing, and how we are. We're okay. We're getting there. We're doing better. And I think this year is going to be great. 21's a lucky number, right? So hopefully it is. You know, with TBC on the horizon, we plan on keeping the guild together, Eden. We're going to go through it together. We're going to have a lot of fun, and that's the plan. And we want to make more content. We want to stream more. We want to do more podcasts and do more GMAs and make more guides and just talk about WoW. That's a consistent thing in my life for years and years. It's been this game, and I have a passion for it. And I'd like to get back to my roots a little bit this year and provide some of the quality content you guys have come to expect over the years from me and from Defcamp. But I want to thank everyone for, you know, sticking by us, and I'm hoping that this video touches one of you or some of you in a way that you're not alone. We're going through it too, and we hope this year's a better year. I'm really looking forward to TBC. I'm really looking forward to experiencing my favorite iteration of the game personally, and I'm really eager to share that with you all. So thank you for listening to this video. I know it's not something we normally do, but I just feel like I just needed to get some stuff out off my chest about Classic WoW, about TBC, about life in general, and I really appreciate listening. So keep on and grinding. Have a great day, and have a great year.